all these components in there. So I don't know if you want to just go through this, or I can go through this, or if you're interested in feedback from people.
I think it depends on where we stand. If, this group has had a chance to review this, with any, scrutiny or interest, we can answer questions, but I'm happy to kind of talk through how we envision this coming together. That's helpful.
Sure. I think that would be helpful. And I think some of the important things are the touch points for OSAC, like, if there's an opportunity to do, an in-person public engagement, it could be at this type of a meeting. We can hold it at town hall, so there's a little bit more room and space for folks. We could schedule that sometime down the road. We've also done public engagement at events, but we don't have a whole lot of town events between now and, we're looking at getting this kicked off pretty quick. So that's my 2 cents.
It's great. It's worth a nickel at least.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. I got a little background on, myself and design concepts. For those of you who don't know us, we do a lot of parks design work, we do school design, we do a lot of, kind of trail, open space kind of stuff. But we haven't done a project like this in a while, so it was sort of fun to put together this scope, talk with Leslie, Barry, and kind of get a sense of what town needs. I think, the way we envision this really is, I think there were a bunch of boxes that we wanted to try to check, so to speak, to make sure we're giving staff and leadership something to, I think, hang your hat on moving forward, in terms of making planning decisions. Some of the things that are included in our proposal, I think, make some assumptions, again, based on input from staff on, say, where something like land acquisition is, or maybe how staff can support our team to meet the needs of the project. So a couple of things, we wanted to make sure as takeaways that there would be a good look holistically at the system, all the properties individually, and then as a from a systematic standpoint, looking at wildlife habitat, also cultural resources. We want to make sure we get that included. Obviously, the industrial mine itself and whatever else might be out there. I have a background in archaeology, so that's something that is somewhat, I think, is mine. Ultimately, to, yield some recommendations, actionable, planning steps, maybe some sort of, even potentially budget, implications to that, to again, help really roadmap things and help guide some future efforts here. We can get into the nitty gritty here, but
we can have folks make, if you have questions. I think one other thing I would add is Design Concepts is going to partner with Smith Environmental, who's done some environmental studies for the town in the past, but they'll help with some of that type of work. I believe that's kind of the plan there.
Wasn't Smith the one that did the Hutchins Terrace?
They did one of them.
Yeah, Rebecca Hand is one of their senior wildlife biologists, project manager. We worked together in the past. She's great. We worked with all of you, with the town. So she'll kind of be leading that whole natural and cultural effort, obviously in coordination with all of us. And we also have Bob Muta, who's in archaeological consulting to lead that. It's sort of a emeritus status, so it's good, some good insights.
I went looking and couldn't find the 2010 Open Space Management Report. It's not on the OSAC.
It's not on our list
of documents.
I can send it out.
Can I find a copy?
Yep.
I have a quick question though. I'm sorry.
No.
I know there's a lot of phases in here. Do you have just a basic idea like what timeline might be for these various phases to take place? Is it 6 months? Is it a year? Is it longer than that?
Good question. I think we would start with targeting maybe a 6-month time frame, something like that. See where we actually end up. But that seems reasonable, and, you know, I think a lot of it, because a lot of the pieces and parts are in place, right? You know, there is the existing 2010 management plan that we can kind of springboard off of. A lot of the work Rebecca has done already with this, the based system, I think should be real good help. So that does seem like a reasonable.
I think we targeted July. Also knowing that we'll probably want to bring the final plan to the board, so, you know, it might end up being board, you know, August board meeting if it's not 100%, you know, just timing.
Yeah, so that fits in that. Tracy, what's in-
Another document I was gonna add to your list is the city of Lafayette has a wildlife plan that is very well done. That would probably be worthwhile.
When do you need to do that? Or when
Maybe 2 years ago, a year ago, I mean, it's not very old.
City of Lafayette?
There's no reference to a Boulder County open space document. It seems like they're a continuous, they're our nearest neighbor. It seems like that document ought to be.
You mean the county or the city?
County, not, the
Yeah.
city is here, but not county.
And I was also gonna, send you the Prairie Dog playbook, the updated,
The what?
Prairie Dog Playbook.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
So I really like this start to it. And I think when we first started talking about what we envisioned for an open space master plan, we were wanting to have some framework, some guidance where any resident could look and see, what is it that we're hoping to see a long-term, 5 years, 10 years down the, a roadmap to get us there. So what I really like is your mentioning of all of these documents, because it's so easy. Time flies by so quickly, and it's so easy to forget about the work that was done in 2005, 2010, but we are the culmination of that. The one thing that I would suggest we look at, and it is still part of our mission as an open space committee, is we are still very interested in those properties that we can acquire that are adjacent to our town. And so it would be folding that into this as well, because we don't know what we don't know. We don't know if there's going to be real estate that's going to come available in a few years' time or not. But I think it should be part of our plan. And it should be, even if it's given a very small role, it should be part of that. Right now in 2024, we realize we could have a little more open space.
Right, and that's why I would say that in addition to the open space summary report 2005, we should look at.
We have the updated one. Yeah, we have one from 2024. It was the very beginning, 2024. Yeah. So I can send you that as well. A lot of it is pretty static over the years, but that's okay. It's reinforcing, so.
Absolutely.
And it should have, but some of those have been acquired in some cases by the town, in some cases not. The changes.
Progress.
Yeah,
But I love it because it also shows the relevancy. We're still talking about things that this community and this town were concerned about 20 years ago.
and there is another document. I don't know if it's perfect to have in here, the trail zone.
Oh, yeah, that's absolutely.
The, trail recommendations that we send to the county every year.
Well, I was thinking of the underlying Excel document that we thought. It's so big, we can't even email it. We have to drop by this because it's just.
And Leslie, I didn't see HHR on this list either for documents, but.
Oh, you're right.
That's worth including.
We can include it, although, Rebecca
Hold it.
worked on, so I think you'll have it, but I'll include the HHR study.
Yeah, but it is part of
And our recommendation.
future
Mm-hmm.
sometime.
It's been a while. Well, yeah.
But I love this. I mean, this is the direction we need to take for showing the concept of deliberate planning. That this town has a focus and a plan. So,
And I think from the conversations that we've had here at OSAC for the past probably 2 years, our concern post-mortem fire, quite frankly, has really been about land management, open space land management. And I don't mean to say that kind of neglected.
No, I
It
agree with
hasn't
you
been
hundred
a
percent.
priority with the town. And it's just been kind of patches that can, and it hasn't, we would like to see that shift. And this is how we feel that we will be able to influence the town, the outcome of this management plan. So this is one that I think will have more of an impact than some might, where you just, okay, here, we needed that, put it on the shelf and go on.
Yeah, that's a great point. It gives you something defensible, right? To sort of bring to your community and say, look, this has been vetted, this has been explored. Here's what we think are the best options forward. So we're actually doing some work with City of Louisville right now too, and obviously they have some similar impacts and similar concerns.
For us to understand how you all think and how you work and what kind of projects you come up with, would it be helpful for us to look at some finished plan you've done for some other community?
You're certainly welcome to. One of the ones I helped with the open space, the City of Lafayette Parks Recreation Space Plan, worked with their open space board, actually on land acquisition, kind of coordination, and so that's certainly available, and that's something that we contributed to. And we have some other options. Yeah, we did a lot of our work has been sort of that more general parks, recreation, and open space focus. So I did exclusively that kind of planning work for many years. Before this, I came from a firm working on kind of a park service level kind of stuff. Same kind of thing, management planning. So this kind of fits the experience that we have, but we can certainly share for resources with you.
Okay. The Park and Rec master plan for Superior has a set of recommendations, and their high and low price estimates and timeline recommendations. I didn't see that addressed here. Is there going to be recommendations that are priced out or timelined or
Maybe not,
prioritized?
maybe not priced out per se,
Prioritize.
but prioritize. I think recommendations and maybe some priorities, because this is kind of a low budget management plan. It's not going to get in depth enough for them to do a concept price perspective. That takes a little bit more time and energy out of the planning staff, which, yeah. But what may come out of this is a recommendation to produce that the next year or the year after. So this plan may come up with, here's 10 recommendations, here's where they fall priority wise, and then some you may be able to put a budget to, but I think that's a little bit beyond the scope of this plan per se.
Yeah, and when we've done things like that in the past, often it's for capital improvements. But it can certainly apply to say, I think we include this in our proposal. One of the recommendations that would come out of this maybe is to do a wayfinding or to do a trail map. So we could try to set some priority to those based on these kind of discussions. What we will often do is, I think you kind of alluded to this, offer a high, medium, low priority in terms of budget impact, high, medium, low, and then whatever that range could be, just to kind of help sort of advance the discussion.
That would be very helpful.
So opportunity for input along the way. I think there's a variety of ways we can do that. One of the things I wanted to make sure you knew is we have two kind of offshoots of OSAC that are volunteer groups. One is the wildlife monitoring and one is the raptor monitoring. Those groups have volunteers beyond the committee, but they may have some valuable knowledge, so we could invite them to one of our future meetings and have you listen in if they have input, or if there are real specific questions from those kind of folks who have that expertise or that experience in town, we can shoot it off to those members.
and if the wildfire mitigation, you know, you and Christie's become part of something that, which you could, I guess, with the memorial planning that's going on.
Believe me.
And I was gonna say, I'm not sure if we're calling it memorial anymore, or.
We don't know yet.
Okay. But I mean, these things.
Yeah.
Okay,
I was thinking the same thing, but we're not far enough along.
yes.
Yes. So we have folks on the committee and in these volunteer groups who have expertise and interest in certain areas, so there might be opportunities to either connect as a whole group or connect just with those individuals. That makes sense.
Yeah, so I think what I'm hearing here, and this is great, we have gaps, I think, in this report, based on how this effort could play out. So it would be great to sort of fill those in and then see what rises to the top in terms of how that workflow goes, how to get this to a point of completion, maybe the timeline we have, the budget we're looking at. So. Great.
Rein us in if we get out of.
Well, and that's, we like the enthusiasm, so we sometimes need to rein ourselves.
But I think the goal is really to give us some tools to work with and then some perspective of our system wide and where do we need to prioritize our energies, maybe in the 5-year period and maybe further out.
So I sent some initial comments to you today. I don't know if you had a chance to look at them, but I think I'd really like to look at that 2010 document. So I can understand how a management plan is different than a master plan. And then make some comments. Should I forward them
Money is the.
to you? Yeah, there is that. Should I forward them to both of you?
Sure. Yeah, no, I have not heard my.
Oh,
Yeah. And I think, a master plan looks at, just a greater level of detail and recommendation, where this might be a broader perspective with a little less. But we are looking for some land management, suggestions or guidelines or best practices. I think staff really would like to see that, but then I know that, we need, some direction in some other areas as well. Great. Well, you are welcome to stay or go. Or.
Hang out for a little bit, that's
Sure.
Thanks for hearing this out. Comments?
Grab our next guest. Was it Tori that?
Yeah. Both of them.
Oh, okay. Was Tori going to speak?
I don't think she's gonna be here.
This time, okay. Okay, hi. Oh my goodness. So good to see you all. You have our presentation. Yeah. Corey, feel free to sit in, or if you want to sign up, that's totally fine as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Kari. We did have a real quick overview. Real quickly, hi, I'm Lisa Ritchie, Planning and Building Director for the town. I was here last year talking to you. Alex.
Hi, my name is Alex Haeflin, and I'm also a planner at the town spirit.
And kind of tag team this. We also have a couple members of our planning commission who are here tonight just to listen. So planning commission within the town is kind of the body that is the most charged in our code as well as in state statute with kind of creation of the comprehensive plan. So they are just kind of here to listen and observe. They might have some questions for you depending on where we come with the discussion. So just as you all know, we are in the early stages of updating our comprehensive plan and our transportation plan. We're doing these at the same time so that when we think about changes to what we're doing on the land, we understand the impact for our transportation network and vice versa, right? So we got a grant from DOLA to be able to double our scope.
And DOLA is
Department of Local Affairs.
I have a quick question. I was tracking it being the comprehensive plan. Has it always been the comprehensive plan and transportation? So when did the transportation part get added?
The last time we did the comp plan was in 2012. Transportation kind of emerged as a big topic, so we did a deep dive and adopted a transportation plan in 2014. So that's the last time we did that plan. And similar to the comp plan, we now have the DDI, we have a lot of trails, we have some other connections. So they're both, in desperate need of an estate.
Is it one project or is it two projects
There
that are going?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and they'll probably be two separate documents, but we are running them very much in parallel.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no questions are bad.
And Lisa, what did the DOLA grant something called to do concurrency?
We got an extra budget. We have $300,000, which is a little lot to do both of these plans. So DOLA, we had 150 in the town budget and DOLA doubled the budget for us. So yeah, last time we did this was in 2012. Really, one of the primary things that we use the comprehensive plan for is kind of big picture. What do we want in terms of development on property or redevelopment or change in investment, right? So that can really drive where town investment goes, where we want change, and where we're kind of happy with things as they are. And so, since the last time we did this, we obviously now have downtown, Rogers Farm, Wildflower Park, our favorite open space. And then in terms of the transportation plan, again, we now have the DDI, road networking downtown, 88th Street capacity improvements, things like that. So a lot has changed. So we're pretty out of date. Also, since 2012, as you know, we've had 2013 floods, we had the COVID-19 pandemic, we had the Marshall Fire, right? So a lot of the context within our town has changed as well. It's certainly time to revisit all of these policies. Big part of the comprehensive plan is the map, right? So the land use map really just kind of defines areas of change, areas of opportunity, areas of stability. This was just the last map. And again, in addition to just land uses, like where we want houses or where we want offices, we're also linking together topics, again, transportation, sustainability, resiliency, economic development. We have to do a water component, making sure that we're tying new development to our water resources naturally. One other thing, since you all have a specific purview, I just want to, and you just talked about your open space master plan. I think this is a great thing to pair. So for your group and for all of our groups in town, really, comprehensive plan is kind of to be high level, right? So if we think about a property, whether or not we want to designate it as open space, that's kind of a comprehensive plan decision. How you actually manage that property, do you put a trailhead there? Do you put trails there? Do you leave some places developed or natural, or do you that is really kind of the purview of your board, right? To really kind of get into the specifics of what happens within our open space areas. And so kind of high level policy, y'all are in charge of all the details.
Okay.
So where we are, in the timeline, just on a general sense, is right about here. We're doing research, we're doing outreach to committees, to different stakeholder groups within the town, as well as I already said market research, right? And then go to the next slide. We can kind of say where we are currently. So we're kind of phase 2 roughly right now. Going to phase 1 where we've already completed. We did the Chili Fest, and then we also had the Fall Festival where we had some engagement. We had a few pieces of feedback and whatnot from the town, and then we're looking to do some other events in the future, like a pop-up event, open house, potentially some more surveys, and then what we're really interested in is a potential speaker series where we get some relevant topics and get a little more in depth on some of these things and get kind of really pull out some of the issues and things that we're really trying to tackle in this plan.
Yeah, so right now we're kind of in the gathering information phase, right? So we're talking to everybody, we're gathering information. We're going to kind of go behind the scenes a little bit over the coming months. Ultimately, we'll emerge with issues for the community to talk about. We like this, we don't like this, we're comfortable with this. And so we will come back to you when we get to that phase, right? So just to have the second opportunity to start weighing in on different decisions and recommendations. So with that, we have some questions for you. Oh wait, no, go ahead. No, I forgot.
From our first survey, we had on the first question, we had kind of a one-word. What would you think of when you think of the town? And so obviously you can see this word cloud, and you can see some of the words that are larger, definitely had more people saying that. So you can see open space, trails, small town, community, parks. So yeah, there's definitely a few things that kind of stick out there, and obviously some of those things are very relevant to this group. So that's honestly why it kind of stood out in this word cloud.
Oh, yeah.
This is a graphic that I made that is in basic terms is comparing lot acreage. So the idea that there is pieces of land within the town, and altogether it's hard to understand what those look like, but also comparing it to places in town that have already been developed or that have already have some kind of character, and just understanding just solely on a spatial level what that is equated to in terms of acreage. Not necessarily that that will go there, but just that this is a comparable space when someone says, what fits here?
Yeah, so I think Alex was just trying to display like the yellow pieces or property that's not currently not developed, right? And so collectively that land area is the 81 acres in the town, right? So that's roughly equivalent to the area of the Superior Marketplace or the area of the, right? And then he did a little comparison too of like, okay, so Harriet's is 23 acres. That's roughly equivalent to the downtown core, right? So just when we think, because it's really hard for me anyway, to try and understand, you know, kind of a big piece of vacant land, you know, what that translates to in other parts of town that are developed. So we just kind of created this as a tool to help put kind of things in perspective in terms of vacant land. It's equivalent to about 2.3% of the town is vacant. So when we say, you know, we're pretty much built out, that's true. And yet we still have 80 acres-ish to think about what we'd like next. So tonight, we just have a few questions for you for discussion. Again, you know, and we'll just read them and then you guys can take it from there. So within the lens of OSAC, what issues matter most to you? Imagine the town in 10 years, what would you like to see different? And then through this process, if there's any kind of data or questions that would help you in some of your decision making, you know, commit to, you know, possibly doing everything you'd like, but we just would love to know if there's things we could do to help you make decisions. So I'll just open it up with that.
Open space. Honestly, from my perspective, and I think from the group as a whole, is retaining all the open space that we have, not having any of it converted into something else. We'd like to see more open space added when the board of town already owns, and this is no surprise to anyone because we just updated the town 15, and that's why you were here the last time.
Yep.
So that's one that, you know, we as a group said we would love to see that officially designated open space. I'd like to see the home rule charter passed because that would ensure that if after that point in time and anyone who was talking about converting land from open space to something else, it would require a vote of all of us who live here, registered voters in Superior, that we would have to vote for that to happen. So I'd love to see both of those things happen, but all through the lens of open space. And I've said many times that open space is how my husband and I decided to move here. And we moved here from Illinois, and we picked Superior based on what we saw in the open space here, but that was our number one thing. Which is also why I got an OSAC.
I think it's more than just what is considered a vacant space. You know, what is our open space? This committee is a champion for wildlife corridors, migratory patterns, protection of our immensely diverse raptor population, and deeply concerned what further development and encroachment in our open space corridors would do. So I would say, yes, it's protecting open spaces and trying to acquire adjacent, but fundamentally it is about protecting our wildlife.
Well, and I will actually even take that up just one tiny touch. That it's about protection of long-term protection of local ecosystems.
Yes.
Because that is the protect our wildlife as well as all the natural plants and everything. So, cause yes, I mean, some things like right now, town 15 is not built on, it is not a healthy ecosystem. So taking that to that step of having a healthy local ecosystem of doing.
But we're not so many invasive weeds,
And
not those noxious weeds.
This is really great feedback. Keep going.
Reiterates the town 15 issue. I think probably the majority of this group would like to visualize it as open space in the truest sense. The Park and Rec master plan lays out options for parking lots, courts, ball fields, etc. Is that conflict likely to get resolved in this comprehensive plan?
My hope, and ultimately, I'm just a facilitator. Alex and I are facilitators of the process. Folks like David and Michael back here, and then your town board ultimately will be, I think, the final decision makers. And I don't know that the comprehensive plan is going to distinguish really deeply between like maybe some level of park development versus preservation as open space, or if it's just, you know, it should not be developed for X, Y, and Z, and then leave it up to you boards. So a lot of the fine grainness of what happens on town 15 will be, I think, the degree to which the town board wants to get that granular in there.
What I am hoping to see, you've heard me say this before, Lisa, I'm just hoping with this comprehensive plan that it does take into consideration, because I tell you, I'm one of those people, I will do the surveys, I love the opportunity for the survey, but we did this 2021, and I want my input to count from 2021 to.
I hope we put this to bed. I'll just say that.
I'm just saying, over 400 residents 3 years ago said what we wanted with town 15. I just don't see why that needs to be rehashed. For a master plan,
I agree, and I think, right, like this is why we were here last time, right? Because I think there's not maybe unanimous decisions or maybe unanimous agreement, you know, within the decision makers right now. Maybe there is, I don't know, but I think my hope is that it can get confirmed, and if it does get confirmed as open space, like you said, if the charter gets approved, then we are tasked with zoning it as open space and then taking care of that, you know, ability to revert, right? So, but again, I think the degree to which the community agrees today, we'll have to, you know, reconfirm. And then again, the degree to which we define that, I think will come out. But I would imagine when we get to the scenario point, town 15 is open space will be kind of a question that we confirm, right?
Right, and it'll continue to be a committee focus for us to recommend to the board to purchase the property or to rezone it rather. So that, and then I would say on the lines of what you mentioned with home rule, another concern that we have as a committee is to make sure that open space indeed is open space in perpetuity. And so that it is not then designated by town on a whim to be developed.
Or in our next election.
Yes.
I'd like to see us gain a stronger sense of how our open space affects the people of the community. You know, there's a lot of things written about how open space enhances the health, the mental health, and the physical health of the community, and I think it does. But I think our notion of how our open space ties into the physical and mental health of residents of Superior is hazy. Maybe hazy is the best we can ever do, but I think there might be some ways to whenever we acquire a piece of open space, or when we do something different with it. Do we want more use because we want to see people active because we think that's good for health, or do we want less use so the land doesn't get worn out so much? And I think those are some things I'd like to see.
I think that's a great tension, and frankly, we probably won't get into the, you know, specifics of, again, you know, that's kind of your purview, not necessarily our purview. You don't want us deciding that. But I hear you though, and I think the thing that I'm hearing on that is like, what is, the open space value in our community? Clearly, we saw in the word cloud, right? I think the question that we asked people for that was, what do you love about the town of Superior? And you all thought open space clearly was the biggest theme. So I think it's very much a community value and a community, just something that emerges really easily for our community. I think trying to define that more, I would love to be able to understand what that means on an individual level and what it means both from like an economic development perspective, from a property value perspective, and from a community, just core value, it feels really high. But we're gonna leave it up to you to talk about, should it be developed or passive or more recreation and that type of stuff. I don't know that we'll get to that degree for all the properties.
And I think since the fire, there's a tension between open space, protecting open space and having open space not be impinging on residents. How do you keep open space open the way you like it, but not have it be a threat to the residents?
I think that's a really interesting question, something I'm thinking about, right? It's a risk more than an asset for some people. And you probably saw one of the questions we asked in a community survey is, does the town have enough open space today? Right, so even if what we might find through this exercise collectively is we might find open spaces are really, really high value, but the community collectively is fine with what we have, right? And so I think that's something that I think that the board is gonna have to wrestle with, and you all are gonna have to wrestle with, right? Like, yes, we value it, but we're actually comfortable with the amount we have because of the cost it takes to maintain it, or the resources it takes to maintain it, or we have other things as a community we've decided that we need to use that land for. So I think that is probably where that tension is gonna come, not that open space is gonna high value for our community, but what is the right.
But I think,
Go ahead.
does anyone have an idea of how much of the town is roughly open space? I know.
Back to your bubbles, is that what you're going?
I did also do those numbers, and roughly, does anyone have an idea just to kind of think about, because it is so prevalent in the town. To kind of throw out a number, if anyone has an idea.
I don't remember I have it. I have a spreadsheet, but no, what is?
8%,
What is it?
8%,
Higher.
Really?
15.
Higher.
23.
Higher.
80. I know that won't be 31.
33%, you're the closest. It is about a third of the town already, and that doesn't mean that it is one direction of good enough or not good enough.
And with that, you're considering the green spaces. Corridor,
What were you saying?
Yeah.
We did this.
All the fingers, but not the developed
which aren't
parks.
No.
technically open space.
Well, again, that's capital O.
Yeah,
Yeah.
What the community maybe perceives versus what is designated or based on, right?
Well, I think that's an important distinction.
Well, it is, because like when you say fingers, when we had the request from the resident who's interested in having another trail done, between Waterford and
Vista corridor.
so that stretch of green grass that is owned by the town, I guess that could be considered a finger, but to me, that's more like a park. It's green space that's.
We actually
Half
need the Vista corridor open space, so I think we can call it.
Well, that's the part though that is south or north rather of the dirt road. I'm talking about the piece that's actually south of the dirt road and between Waterford and.
That is actually not town property.
It is on Boulder County.
It's
Ditch property.
it's ditch property.
The dirt road is.
Mhm.
I'm talking about the grass parcel that tees into it. I'm not describing it well. It's on me. I can,
We'll talk.
yeah.
So I guess not necessarily to get bogged down on like specifically what designation maybe the corridor is in between, because an animal's not gonna know whether it's designated OSN, OSR. Neither do most people. I mean, this group definitely does, but I think that part between that, if open space came out as the number one thing, that would make sense of why that came out to be such a high priority. It's so prevalent in the town, whether it's actually considered open space or just rather that the proximity to something that looks like space. I think the perception is that we do have a lot of open space, and could it be more? Yes, absolutely.
Well, I think what you're saying is something that's not built is considered open space by the general public.
Maybe, some people might consider it areas open space, right, because it's vacant, right? And then, and you know, the 33% doesn't include the undeveloped land, right? So this is just the town-owned land, you know, maybe it's, you know, like all the area between Coyote Ridge and Rock, right?
These are all good.
But she didn't include the areas.
For our management.
It's not vacant land. Yes. We did include the 23 acres of vacant land.
Even though it's private property.
But not open space.
But it's not in the open space. We were just thinking of the land that is vacant.
I would be very careful with that too, because it's a presumption that.
It's not, we're really not trying to presume it gets developed. We're just trying to quantify land that is vacant, right? And you know, because
I just wonder if the private property owner considers it vacant.
they would absolutely consider it vacant because they would want development. And we are actually doing, if they wanted it as open space, they probably would have told us.
Oh, yeah.
We are doing, part of our engagement is actually talking with every private property owner that has land that's developable. And our consultant is connecting with them in this month of November as well. What are their goals for the property? You know, whether they, you know, what would they like to see? And then we can factor that into all of our decision making. But yeah, it's when we put, the only property that we put on there that I think, you know, again, town 15 is on there, town owns it. The remainder of the properties on the vacant land are all private properties. We didn't put anything else in this town on there.
I think for me, from like a staff standpoint, even from, I see it from a resident perspective too, especially people who just like moved here, because we have so many people fluctuating in and out of Superior, is to make it more clear, and it probably goes with the, you know, with the management plan as well. Since we have so many little pockets, it does get confusing on who owns this land. Is it private? Is it open space? Is it, there's so much confusion with that. So like, because I'm such a visual learner, I like to kind of see it. And then that realization kind of comes to light of like, wow, we own, you know, 33%, you said, right? That's considered open space. So I think there's, because as you're going through town, there's all these like, little fingers like between neighborhoods, and you're just like, what do I do with this? Or how is it managed? You know, and then there's this the corridors of like, okay, there's waterways right there. What do we do with like, you know, this type of vegetation? Because we've been in those spaces, removing invasive weeds, but in terms of like managing, you know, because it can be a wildlife corridor, it can be like an area where birds nest and things like that. So how do we protect that? Because backyards are just like right there.
Right, and at the same time, also the wildfire mitigation, the project that we've been working on as well, like the mowing and other things like that, to have to, you know, have safety for, as you were saying, to the residents that abut to those spaces, and having that kind of balance between the two.
It's not really clear, and for me, I feel like that's a big gap, because there's this, I don't know if you want to call it like a buffer space, because there does need to be like a buffer space between like, okay, what's considered my home, my property, and then open spaces right next door. What is my responsibility as a resident to you know, play that role in like helping our ecosystems and, you know, to help our wildlife? Because I think that, you know, when I talk to residents, like, oh, we saw a coyote going through and it was going off, you know, beating off of that tree or something. And then it's like, what do you do? Like at that point, how do I just leave it? And, you know, if the wildlife encounters that I get the questions for. So I think making that very clear on expectations would be helpful. And that helps the future.
And that probably is gonna be more
That's on,
That might be,
in that bucket.
Yep, that's on the bucket. One other question I have for you too, and particularly, you know, the desire for more open space in town, which I think is real. One of the ways that we can achieve that is if there are different uses or development we want in town, then you intensify an existing property, right? Say we decide as a community, we need 1,000 more residential units. It's arbitrary, do not believe that. That's an example. where, you know, so that we don't put them on town 15, maybe we put them all in the marketplace, right? So we intensify other areas of town in order to preserve other areas as undeveloped, right? And so I think those are gonna be some of the trade-offs that we have as a community. If we decide, you know what, we really need these things. You know, are we okay with adding traffic in a certain part of town in exchange for, you know, leaving some of the areas alone? And I think that's a role that I think this board can wrestle with a little bit, right, you know? Go ahead.
And just something that go too far. This is also something that if saying on a general sense of certain developments, we already have in our code, a certain percentage needs to go to
Yeah.
open space, that it could be that you in certain developments push for more open space or potentially a higher percentage. Or a use that would say, you know, maybe it's 20% right now for a certain development in commercial that at a set specific size, maybe it's up to 30%.
Yeah.
Where there is even on areas that do end up getting developed in certain areas, that there still is that caveat that some space will still be dedicated, even in perpetuity to that.
Right, like think about Zaharias, right? You all remember the discussion about Zaharias and the wildlife conservancy, right? A number of years ago, for those of you who were here, right? So maybe developments for fine on certain part of the property, provided we do extra and above and beyond, so.
Is zoning on that piece of property or other controversial piece of properties likely to change?
So the comprehensive plan is zoning, but it forms the basis for supporting a rezoning request, right? So similar to why, like, you know, you all know town 15 is zoned commercial, right? Zaharias is also zoned commercial, right? And so generally when someone comes in to rezone, they look for the comprehensive plan to like lead the way in terms of the town collectively would prefer this. So the policy gets a plan, but we have to actually. Yeah, so I mean, to go back to the second question, you know, in addition to open space, are there other changes or things that you all would like to see in the next 10 years, right? Development in other areas, for preservation of open space, or just other, you know, just as a resident in town, what other thoughts?
Not as an open space for lens, just.
I mean, an open space lens or just other, you know, lenses that maybe, you know, balance open space or other needs that we have as a town.
I think we need to encourage an industry or something to come into that spot that was supposed to have a bioscience center.
Yeah.
Something has to be there. It's a tax base, it's a draw for the marketplace, it's a draw for downtown, and it will never fill those off of the retail spots unless we have an anchor there.
Yeah.
And a hotel, we've got to replace the Element with one or two hotels, because the sports stable brings in all these kids for hockey tournaments, and they used to stay in the Element. Yeah.
Actually, just to sit on that, that's what a person who, I mean, that's what the student to the hotel, next to where the element is, he's either in management or ownership of the sports stable. So that's why they got a hotel, gonna be really good.
Well, we had to, when we sold our house in Boulder, we had 6 weeks where we had to live somewhere. We lived in the Element. And the weekends were crazy with kids running up and down the hall.
We do have a hotel that got approved on the last next to the Element Hotel.
Yeah.
They, I think plan to break ground in the spring, but planning commission has worked for that. It's like a model.
Long-term stay. Stand very much.
Yeah.
He's looking at this lot on sports day while that. Yeah, absolutely.
Any other comments?
I guess I'd like to see, and I know, and I think Spirit does a good job of this, but I'd like to see even more encouragement of non-vehicle connections. I'm one of those e-bike people my age. And I love being able to run to the grocery store or the hospital or wherever and not take a car.
That would be great. More, so and for you, does that mean like more trails, safer connections, better sidewalks, like?
So that I don't have to go on the streets.
Like trail lanes, yeah.
You know, you know, I'll go down Cold Creek and through Circle Park and I can get to Safe right through that way. And I can go north and go along Vista Corridor and I can, you know, take 36 Black and I can pretty much without getting on any street, I can get to gas, except for right when I get over there.
You know, we heard so much about in the comprehensive plan, that first survey is how much people walk out there, they recreate out there, they move their neighbors out there, just how it's trail connections.
But I still think, and I agree with you, I still think it comes with the relevant community engagement. Because if I own a home and have had it for 30 years, and now there's a plan to put a sidewalk in between my house and my neighbor's house, where there's not been one for 30 years, just they want to provide a connector.
Yeah.
I think that there needs to be some added focus on those homeowners who for 30 years didn't have traffic.
And I mean, because we can all argue about, but it was, you know, it's not privately owned, so that was always a risk. But yeah, you've been there 30 years, that'd be pretty tough to.
I just think it needs to be deliberate connectors.
Yeah, well, and I think, you know, major trail connections will put on a map during the transportation plan, right? You know, we've taken a lot of feedback and we've had maps out of all of our engagement. People are drawing right now, you know. So yeah, I think big trail connections generally get put on those plans. Little ones though do sometimes come up from time to time and as you know, right? People are cutting through here, what do we want to do about it, right? So.
So trails.
Never heard anything about
A tough one though. I mean, we've seen this because our town is great with surveys. And I think every resident should have a say, but it's just real interesting when you have resident focus who are maybe 2 miles away versus someone who's right there.
And it doesn't make a
I don't know if it's the right term for prioritizing community engagement, but I think that should be considered.
Okay, yeah, you've said relevant a couple times and that's what I'm hearing, right? If there's something going in, you know, kind of in a certain area, those residents.
I mean, the people who live south of Colton Road, do they really know what is wanted in Riverbend area?
Right.
I don't know, but I think it should be considered.
Yeah. Totally agree. Any other thoughts? Any other hopes and dreams you have for the town?
Yeah, the rezoning of town 15. Yeah. I know it's a fiddly thing to talk about green space versus open space. I get that there are corridors. I do get concerned with the development that open space becomes, well, there's a patch of grass inside of the building, in front of the building. Well, that's aesthetic. It's aesthetic, but that is not open space.
I agree, and I think that's something that we agree, it needs to be like, is that actually defined, is it actually helpful? You know, from a built environment perspective, like we've kind of driven all our buildings further apart by, you know, spacing. If it's not serving like a corridor need, right? Like we need to be intentional about whether we're putting green space in town. Is it making things more spread out or is it actually bringing it together? Use it, what's the reason? So yeah, and I think about that probably more in terms of like the marketplace, right? And you know, if we have a 30% open space requirement for commercial development, you know, do we need that in the marketplace? You know, right? So yeah.
What's the next opportunity for input for either for the OSAC or for people as an individual?
So we are kind of gathering all this data right now. We're going to kind of crunch everything. We're going to be going to planning commission. Planning commission gets kind of monthly updates all the time with what we are, where we are. So if you're curious, you can always kind of check in on what planning commission's doing. We are taking a major update to planning commission and the board in January. So if you want to hear kind of the results of all the engagement, summary of the existing conditions and the economic data and all of that, if you're curious, that's going to go to the board in the end of January. In terms of OSAC's role, we envision coming back to you when we actually have like some labels on maps that maybe have some suggestions for what it might be. making sure that we get your feedback, and same with the transportation thing, right? We've heard, people would love a trail here, or they want to change this intersection. We'll certainly give you the chance to weigh in on all of this forward. Anything else, David? David's our planning commission chair, Michael Barnes. Any questions that you have, or?
Anybody? What's the system for gathering suggestions from people when the survey is closed?
Email us anytime.
Email.
Yep.
Email.
Email planning or staff, or email Leslie and tell me.
Yeah, or you can email us and we'll pass it on. Anyway.
You know, we've had a lot of discussion about town 15, but the other one that we've hit on, but haven't really talked about our position, I guess, is the heritage areas. Because that is prime wildlife habitat, right? Lots of coyotes out there, lots of birds. I mean, Boulder County considers that lake very high priority, not that they do much with it, but you know, I mean, it is prime habitat. So I have a lot of concern, right? I mean, obviously overdeveloping the areas and the boundaries that we've talked about in the past in terms of how far setback would be.
Yeah.
They're really not that far, right? I mean, and I understand the property's not that big either. I mean, it's large, but when you start talking about whatever, 100-yard buffer or something, yeah, I understand the trade-offs. But I know there's a fair amount of citizen interest. I have no idea how to quantify that. And having that be open space,
Yeah.
And if nothing else, really honestly doing a good job protecting it. So
Yeah, I definitely think when it comes time, if the town doesn't purchase it as open space, right, because we can't tell the developer that it doesn't ever get to build on his land. But if we don't purchase it, right, then when it comes time for development, I think embedding in the comprehensive plan, I think really strong language around buffers and protections against, I think that is something that I think when it comes to that particular area.
And we have some of that work already accomplished.
That's great.
we do have a recommendation on Sahara's property, they can put together, so.
Yeah, because I think generally you're right, the community all agrees that some degree of protection around there is, necessary and important, and I think, even if it does get designated for development, it's sort of getting that resource. We're good? I think, okay, thanks for your time. I really do appreciate a lot of the time. You're really great, you're doing important work. And if you have any questions or you have any thoughts that occur to you after we walk out the door, don't forget to reach back out. If we get a question with some of the members of the board committee for our project. Yes. Yep, I can take a picture. Thank you guys. If you wanna stand.
So I'm going to the front.
And I'll fix it. Thank you. Okay, good.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. Thank you.
Hey,
And everybody look at her.
Okay.
all right, you're all.
That was a really good discussion. Okay, so let's look back on where we are with the agenda. Oh, so now we're on the 2025 work plan. So over the last few months, we've had the chance to go line by line and talk about what is still relevant for our duties that we see as a committee. And so what I propose we do at this time, unless, does anyone have any changes that they want to make that they've thought of since our last meeting about the work plan? Because what I'd like to do is just go on ahead and make a recommendation to the board to accept our work plan. I'm not jumping too far ahead though for anyone. I just want to make sure we, okay. So in that case, what I'd like, well, what I have kind of written here is OSAC recommends the town board of Superior accepts the 2025 OSAC work plan. Is that sufficient? Okay, so in that case, And the so moved was Tracy, right?
Yeah.
Tracy moved, Rita seconded.
Tracy, Rita, all in favor, raise your hands. And we are unanimous.
Okay.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, team. Now, let's talk about the wildlife camera. And I know that we've had some emails, through our OSAC channels talking about the cameras. And this is an issue that we've thought about before of, wouldn't it be great if we had some method to document the wildlife traffic, to learn a little bit about it? But how do we do this where it's not a personal offense to someone who might be walking by, not knowing they're being recorded? Where it would be property and who would process it. I haven't kept up with all of the back and forths. There have been several different cameras. Do you have an update, Tracy, on? Okay, great.
So yes, there are, the proposal that I guess I would like to put forward is that we purchase one camera as a proof of concept, that we place that, somewhere at Bowes Pond. It is not somewhere that anybody should be going.
Okay.
For one thing, I think if you're out on public property, it's not illegal to take a picture, right? That's not, people are on public property. That said, that particular location would not be, there's no reason for anybody to do that. Don't want to reveal specific locations, for safety reasons, yeah. But there are multiple options. One would be Bowes Pond. Another is Rock Creek under McCaslin. There is like under a cult, it runs under there that for sure a lot of wildlife uses. So that's another option. And then the third option is to purchase Coal Creek properties. It would be really nice to know what kind of wildlife is using that property. Especially as we consider, you know, if we were to consider doing any sort of development there, it would be nice to know what sort of impact we would have. Bowes Pond, we went that route. That'd be more about monitoring dens, and health of animals, those kinds of things. I think that would be the easiest place for us to do this proof of concept. So that would be the initial proposal. It would cost us $400 for the first year. That's about $180 for the camera. It's a brand is called Moultrie. It would be the camera and a solar panel, potentially a steel box to put the camera in, and a locking cable, and then $155 per year for the subscription, for the data. It's downloaded via cell, so it's not necessary for somebody to go out. And
so there's not processing.
there is a certain thing that somebody has to be notified, et cetera. But we do have at least one and potentially 2 or 3 very interested volunteers who would like to monitor the video data. So they get notified, you can get notified via email or whatever, anytime the camera takes either video or still.
So this is not one of the ones that has like the AI that does this kind of scrubbing of the data. It's still gonna be the human eyes on.
Well, I guess it depends what you mean by the scrubbing of the AI. So this one does have the ability to say, ignore that branch in this particular square of the frame. So if, for example, if we're placed near, say a den, and there's a branch that happens to come down in front of that den, you can tell it via AI, or, if you want to call it that, ignore that branch. So if that branch moves, it does not automatically take a picture of that. It waits for an actual.
Okay. Yeah, well, in some of the materials that were forwarded to it, it had said that in some instances you can get AI so that you then don't have to have, like you talked about your volunteers, going through and looking.
Yeah, no, we would not. Well, we would be notified. You would only get things that where we had something somewhat recognizable, and somebody just has to look at those thumbnails and decide to check. Yeah, but we do have people who are interested in doing that.
And for proof of concept, so we would purchase a camera.
Yeah.
would there be a time frame to that, you know, how many months we would say, well, this was a solid proof of concept, or
I would propose that we do a year, right, because the
Yeah.
subscription is for a year.
that makes sense?
And then if the first location that we chose didn't work out, we could move it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we could see what worked.
All the seasons
That's right. Yeah,
changes.
changes of season and all those kinds of things. So and that's sort of what,
Would that information then be out on the town's website? No,
I would prefer.
I think that's another part of what this
But
committee
information
can
I just
help
mean
us
is pictures.
manage is like, along with the wildlife monitoring data. Okay, so now we have video data to go with that.
Yeah.
How do we report on that?
Yeah.
I mean, there might be an opportunity to show a picture or two here or there in a report.
It's very similar to what we do with the Raptor program, right? We love to show the birds that are in our community, but we don't necessarily say where they are.
Exactly, and that's the same with the wildlife monitoring program, right? I
Right.
mean, the pictures that we've taken, we have some amazing photos.
Yes.
And the town is welcome to use those photos and or video. I would not automatically place them on the website.
Right.
However, at the 155 subscription a year, you can have sharing with your volunteers. So it could be a way that we encourage people to volunteer, right? And they would have access to those pictures and or video. And we could choose however many or few of the volunteers that we wanted to open it up to, right? And it could be, yeah, you submit X number of reports, you get access to this video. Yeah, I don't know what but you have to be involved. You can't just be a casual.
What was the name of the subscription again?
The camera's called Moultrie, Moultrie.
So are you thinking cameras would be mounted in illuminated areas, or would they have light lenses, or?
They have, red light, it's a no glow kind of camera. So it does sense light in any light, or sense movement in any light.
But that gives a fair enough picture, we'd see the shape of the animal and was.
Yeah, I mean, and clearly probably a little bit more light's gonna be even better than dead of night,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
quality. But yes, absolutely.
Tracy, I know it's just a proof of concept you're talking about, but I know, and you mentioned the raptors, and one of the things that we talked about, I think in the summer, is nesting raptors, like in a cell tower, and putting a camera up there. When I first saw this, I thought, oh, people are gonna talk about that.
No.
So is that maybe something you talked to Peter about, or is that potentially gonna morph into other cameras if it's successful?
Well, I mean, I think it could. I would love to see us have multiple cameras, ideally. All right, have you had any conversations? I believe that was in your court to talk to somebody about the cell phone towers.
That was,
It's probably in my court.
yeah, we talked about it, I think, a couple months ago, and more of like, where do we get permission, because those towers belong to the company and stuff. The town, so we haven't.
So I guess, very valid point.
I think we
Very
can
separate.
get permission, but I think doing the proof of concept
Yeah.
makes it worthwhile to send somebody up 100-foot pole.
Yeah, I think it was the Osprey camera that they have in one Longmont.
Yeah.
They got me thinking about that, because I was watching. It's really
The
cool.
live feed.
And yeah, I could see something in a tower where people are obviously not gonna
Mhm.
probably climb up there. They
Right.
probably
You hope not.
should climb up anyway.
Tracy,
I
what's
just-
the range of these things?
I don't know that I can answer that specifically, but. I mean, maybe, I don't know, more than 20 feet. I mean, I don't know. It's not, yeah, they're more.
And are your costs substantially different at the different locations that you
No, it
mentioned?
costs the same. $400 could be set up anywhere.
So is there advantage to kind of the greater committee agenda of, rather than monitoring a den location,
Right.
monitoring something that gives us the potential to generate data on wildlife migration or movement, and thinking of that,
Right.
that
The culvert.
over under
Culvert.
mechanical one,
Right.
or somewhere else where we can actually provide some preliminary data for an argument for town 15 or for some other corridor argument that would be lacking with a den
right?
monitoring.
I mean, it is, I think they're all interesting, right? They're all very different. We get a lot of reports of animals around those ponds, which is one of the reasons for wanting, you know, considering that one and maybe from my perspective, probably prioritizing that, but because we have a lot of bobcat, well, not as much this year, and coyote, outback, and all kinds of things up there. We don't know for sure what we have in the culvert, right? But it is an interesting idea. I think it would be.
And I think there's Oak Creek being the properties that get acquired, seeing the wildlife migration that's happening there would have similar value to it.
Yeah.
So you want to start with one first, that you're saying?
I mean,
I think it's a proof, I think proof of concept is the.
I mean, I just decided to sort of come in with a low ask,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
Well, you can always change your mind down the road.
and we could do that,
You
we
know,
could do that
add
6
another
months from
camera.
now.
Right.
Because in 6 months' time, granted, we won't have had all the seasons like you pointed
And so
out.
for the $400, we as a committee would vote to say that we support it. We don't have to go to the town. We don't, it comes out of the OSAC budget.
Right.
Okay.
But, I'm sorry, you said $400 for the camera, there's a monthly fee also,
That includes 1 year,
that includes.
yeah.
And
The 180
and the
for the
box,
camera.
Yeah.
and the box that you might have to. put
Yeah, the box, the lock,
And
We
the,
have mounting something?
yes, it usually it's get mounted on a tree or something, no, something like that. So, yeah,
And
the
the
400, the only thing might be, the cell, I don't think we have to worry about that. These particular cameras will use, they have service with 4 main carriers, and they will just pick the strongest signal. Anytime they're asked to download, they pick the strongest signal and use that. So, it's
so they don't have to have a cell connection.
but they do have a cell connection on it. I mean,
Oh, so that's part of the.
yeah, that's part of the deal.
The subscription, yeah, okay, got it. Now I'm with you.
So the only thing I think we might wanna do when I think about this is my $400 number doesn't include tax. Now, as if we have tax exempt status.
Yeah.
That may be a non-issue. I think where the $400 would be all in. For 1 year.
Government have.
Yeah.
That I can tell you.
Yeah.
How much more would it be since it's a subscription, you're paying $400, including the subscription, the equipment and everything? If you did 2, is it just slightly more?
No, I actually think you have to, there are subscription plans that include multiple cameras, but I don't think it would be quite like that. I don't have a good price, but I think it would be at least 6 or 7. I'd have to get to the number.
Well, what are your thoughts, team?
I'd be inclined to go with your initial recommendation, because I think, and I know that's the least aggressive, you know, it's not gonna spend as much money, but it is gonna serve as a solid proof of concept.
I think it's a good idea because I mean, I can look out my back and I see them going up
You
and down.
see
the
that?
path. And I end up going by maybe 100 or 1,000 times more than I see them.
Exactly.
But to know, get more specific data on what they're doing.
I think from a wildlife monitoring perspective, it would just be leaps and bounds more information than what we have right now.
Oh, yeah.
Which is pretty exciting stuff. Yeah, it's a major step up. So anyway.
So maybe you'll be back a year from now asking for 2 more.
Well.
You just have back in.
So yeah, exactly. I mean, if this is just goes swimmingly, maybe 6 months from now, we're discussing it again and saying, hey, let's at least add 1 more. But this way we can test it out, see what happens, make sure the volunteers really are able to manage it. What kind of data are we getting? All of those kinds of things, and go from there.
Any skeptics? Dissenters?
Very reasonable.
Well, then how about, so something along the lines of OSAC supports the $400 purchase of a camera to provide a proof of concept to monitor a town wildlife corridor. All in favor, just raise your hands. Okay. So, there you go.
Did your homework.
I did do that. Met with some people yesterday. Peter voted, so we.
This is, thank you, Tracy.
Really,
I think,
Sincerely,
you know, I
this
think,
is
I think what's,
exciting.
especially, you know, since the fire, we have seen wildlife patterns change.
Yes.
And, yeah, I want to know more about why they even stay,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
After the fire, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's all interesting. It'll be very interesting. So I think it would feed in nicely to, develop a management plan.
Absolutely.
So how soon does that get installed?
I would think pretty soon. Honestly, I think it's more a question of, I guess I would work with you.
Yeah,
Okay,
and then I can do the purchase and then we'll go, yeah.
okay.
Very exciting. Yeah. Okay, next on the agenda is rodenticides campaign plan. And, you know, this is something that we've been talking for a couple weeks, and I spoke with Amber offline. Her take was she didn't have anything prepared to say. We have something concrete that we want to go to the town board. Tracy, you said something along the same lines. But our, you know, as a committee, we do have Tracy and Amber looking at rodenticides to really determine how can we influence how future developers proceed with development, as well as what recommendations could we even give to residents to make sure that, you know, we're factoring in the ecological impact of materials that are used. So we don't have anything to go forward with the board, but do you have anything to add on that?
Well, I mean, I guess it sounds to me like we have to make some sort of recommendation to the board based on what you told me, that maybe that's a, I don't know exactly what the first step.
I mean, you don't have to, but I think, you know, you could put something in the summary notes that we've talked, you know, you're talking about or considering a recommendation. I think that gives the board a good heads up, but, you know, it can be something that's talked about in the comprehensive plan and the management plan, all those kind of things. If we want to have some influence on the use of rodenticides,
And we kept it on the agenda because we didn't want it to fall by the wayside.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I got it on there even for my tentative January one.
Okay. Well, so I think the management plan makes a ton of sense. Is it one of the areas that we would choose to whatever highlight, I guess, in terms of how we manage our land, yeah. Yeah, exactly, yeah. So, because I guess my vision would be that over time, we would have some sort of social media and website sort of plan, or communication plan, that goes out to residents, as well as putting it in some more for documents for developed property.
So to do all that, from what I understand from what you said, we do need to get board.
well, it depends on the approach you take. You know, for providing helpful hints, you know, we can do that, I think. You know, the OSAC can do that at any point. If it's gonna be a recommendation from the town, that would have to go through the board. Or if it's gonna be a recommendation for developers, it would go to planning commission as well. And so that would, yeah.
So two very different things. One is you could say for developers, for example, if there are rodents, you have to submit a plan for how you can remove them without poisoning them. And then the community, you know, people who live here, that's a totally separate approach, right? Because then you're saying, let's just make resources available to people so they don't use rodenticide, or they know that there's options. Right, that there's education about like, hey, this is bad for a lot of reasons, and here are some alternatives that you can consider. So they're kind of two different tracks.
Two different audiences.
That's true.
Like one is really just for developers. I think that's pretty reasonable. Like if you're gonna develop this property, part of that proposal has to include how you intend to
Be responsible.
be responsible with the animals that are living there.
Yeah.
Without just using poison.
Very well. That's what I think, Tracy, where that article you had, where it was posted, but it was just on the Friends of Coal Creek website, right?
Yes. So for those of you who don't know, I wrote an article about alternatives to using rodenticides, and it's posted on the Friends of Cold Creek. On their
And it's very well.
Oh, thank you.
Good.
Any reason we wouldn't include that for Superior, but it is like just as a reference to say, these are some options.
Personally think the more the merrier.
And I just think it's a question of how we go about that. If
Yeah.
we put it on social media, it becomes a message from the town.
That's what I thought, I understand.
It's just assumed that this is the town standpoint.
In which case, we need to make sure that the town really is on board with that. I mean,
But if it's a booth at an event, it's just one of many educational opportunities.
can we put a little QR code that takes them to the
Yeah,
Well,
Yeah.
Friends of Cold Creek website, and
so maybe what we should start with, because I don't think, I mean, like, that article is not saying, it's very soft sell, right? So here's a bunch of alternatives, and here's what you would not want to use rodenticides, and then alternatives.
I thought it was a good education piece for somebody like myself, right?
Yeah. I mean, if we took the standpoint of doing like an article on how to be a neighbor to the open, so how to be a good neighbor to the open space. I live right next to open space. How do I be a good neighbor?
Yeah.
And that can be one of the
points.
one of the points.
And I guess I was also about to say, if maybe what we do need to do is some sort of recommendation to the board to get their approval, that is something pretty soft, right? Like, the town encourages residents to consider alternatives to rodenticides. So it's not saying you absolutely can't use a rodenticide, but at least just pointing them in that.
We're not gonna fine you or write you a
Right.
citation, but
And those things would obviously require much more work to get past, but the board, and I would imagine that they could get behind something that says, we encourage you to consider alternatives. That's pretty simple.
I think that would be.
And then you could start doing a little bit at least, like you said, if it's in multiple, and there's one thing in an article talking about ways to be friendly to the environment.
Yep.
And we could even just link to that article, or.
Right.
It fit in with like
Content.
pollinator gardens and things like that, like these
Yes.
are good things you could do, and there's another good thing.
Here's another thing. But
Even in our town newsletters and whatnot, there are always these friendly suggestions, I'm thinking from ACES, for example. Do all of those go before the board?
no.
I mean, I don't.
Some of them had. Yeah, some of it is just education, although like with ACES,
Yeah.
they have a sustainability plan that was adopted by the town.
yes.
So another way to do that is if it's in a plan that's been adopted by the board, then it's.
Okay, well, we're working on that, right?
Yeah.
That could even be a joint thing between NICES and us, because I can't imagine that they wouldn't get behind.
And I know,
Very
um,
discouraging use.
I'm just trying to find how we just take your article and publish it.
Town letter.
Yeah.
And I know that, coming up though, cause I brought this on Kevin's radar, we're trying to revamp the OSAC page and put more stuff on it, like for open space. I've talked to him, he said it's outdated, so he's just like, and I was giving him ideas, like maybe we should include stuff about like what raptor monitoring program does, what wildlife, monitoring program does, or like what we've done with pollinators, so, cause there's not really much information on there.
I mean, there's links to all those reports, but it's not like current events.
Yeah.
That's fair, yeah.
So unless somebody was digging into it, they probably wouldn't.
You don't find very much unless, like, I don't think it's super user friendly, like if you look around, it's things are scattered, so I'm just trying to find a way to like kind of reorganize it, so when somebody goes on the website, they know where to find things and to get more information and to learn more about what we've done and, some type of effort. So
That's true, and
like
more than
the
just open
warriors or
space in
something,
there.
yeah.
Trying to find out. Sometimes I've had to send emails to staff and say,
Where is it?
Okay, well, for now, I'll make sure that it's in our summary report, that will go to the board tomorrow, and then also in our notes from this evening's meeting.
Okay, and because if we were to get together a plan around, discouraging the use of rodenticides, How long does that have to be? Does that have to be 10 pages worth of governmental, you know?
Can you let Stephanie in?
Or could it be 2 pages, you know, just.
I actually am a fan of concise. Yes.
I mean, if it's 2 pages, I'd probably commit to doing a draft of a plan. I obviously have to think about it, it wouldn't happen overnight.
One would be better than two.
Oh, 1 minute, well. I mean, if it really can just be sort of short, I just don't know how much detail the board needs to actually improve something.
Sure. Oh, just like me.
Where's the sweet part, there we go.
And it might take more than one.
Iteration.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll put that on my list of things to do. Like I said, it may not happen immediately. I have a lot of things on my plate.
I mean, we can talk about that. We'll have it on the agenda in January.
Yeah,
We'll just keep playing.
and it's not like there's huge amounts of development going around town, so that, like, there's some push to get it done quicker.
Except I would love to get the word out to residents.
Yes.
But that's what I thought.
Potentially, they're saying maybe there's ways of doing that through towns.
Yeah, I think you can do it more as a, helpful homeowner hints, like whatever.
Yeah.
Resources for the homeowner.
Yeah.
Okay, is that something that you need us to do, or is it something that you communicate with Kevin? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
I don't think it can we just.
If you write something up, then I can have that it over.
Send your art.
Yeah.
So the article exists, I think you have it, I can read
Yeah.
it.
And especially with temperatures as they get colder,
Right.
this is the time when
So then they
homeowners really
start-
get concerned because
They start coming
they're
in.
coming in the house.
I'll resend that to you.
Okay.
Or under.
That's awesome.
Under our grill,
What?
under our grill.
Yeah.
We kind of want to.
Yeah.
Just revamp it.
All this synergy.
But
It's
you can probably send that newsletter. Yeah.
Getting all excited.
Thank you, Tracy. All right, let's go around the OSAC roundtable. Jeff, do you have anything for the group tonight?
I'm afraid not.
All right. Yep. Leslie,
Nothing more.
Todd? Yeah, you did. You want to talk about fish pond?
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, thank you.
Mhm.
I thought it was in the bureaucracy for come up with another.
Yeah, we definitely.
I sent a note saying, gee, maybe because I'm a newbie, I'd like to know more about the history of the fish pond experiment, that if there was one, and it seemed like it was a good suggestion, a nice asset for a family-oriented town. But I don't know what was done before. There wasn't a opportunity to have that conversation about
I think we've tried
prospective
fishing.
areas. And
We've tried fishing. I don't know the full history. I think there's some skepticism whether our ponds can support fish year round.
so
So,
Trustee Shaw implied that
mhm,
it had been tried,
yes,
right? As in,
and I don't know the extent of that. That was before my history here, and we can look into that, but I think there's a lot of interest in fishing, and fishing, I think, is a very popular family type of activity. I think, the park committee also has expressed some interest in that. So it might be something where we actually need to do a study. Do we have a pond in town that would, support a fishing program? And typically that does, include stocking the fish. Yeah, so there is some cost to it, but there's also grant programs for that, and there's state programs for that. But you certainly don't wanna stock a pond and then have the fish die every year, that just seems irresponsible. So I think the first question is, do we have a pond, or do we have one that's close to being a good habitat? Maybe we just need to improve it a little bit, so.
Riverbend Pond used to support fish, and I don't know how, I don't know. I don't know if they were stocked or, if they all died, but anyway, my children used to fish Riverbend.
Yes, yes.
Well, people fish Bose Pond all the time. I've never seen anybody catch any. But they're out there, they're out there.
And I gave some and they told me that they have.
But
it's
you think this is something that we can get the history of, between now and January?
So, I'll try to look at the history, but I think even more importantly is to see if Fish and Wildlife has some resources where we can say, where are we today? Like,
That's a.
you know, has this pond silted into the point where it won't support fish, or, you know,
Yeah.
it will support fish if we do A, B, and C, that kind
The
of thing.
CPW, like, that one field trip that you didn't get to go to in Fort Collins.
Yeah.
Remember, we did a fish hatchery tour
Yeah.
up in Bellevue, near Fort Collins, and they were talking about the process of stocking fish and stuff. It's very intensive and lots of steps involved, like in terms of like where they get their fish, the eggs, and they go from like section to section, like the stages of its life before it hits the ponds. And then, but first they do have to check, like, if you're gonna order fish and stock them, they need to check if the water quality is good. And then I think that's through them. I have a contact there, so I don't know. I think it's CPW that does it, or I don't know if it's someone that they work
Be
with,
nice if
but.
they could give us an assessment
Yeah.
of.
We could probably pay somebody to give us.
I'm sure we can do that.
That's not a town thing.
Yeah.
I think that would be a great first start and find out if it's even viable.
Mhm.
And then we would just need to, pulse community engagement to see if it is really anything the community would want.
I'm trying to remember that Allison did a program some years back.
We've done some fly fishing.
Yeah.
But it was more about the
Technique.
The most-
there, I don't think any fish were caught, but yeah.
Cause Tom did something right
Yeah.
there.
That's great.
And then
And it
I
went over
had a
well.
question of whether that's Mission Creek. Is this really a park and recreation issue? Not
Oh, and not an
Not an
open
open
space.
space issue.
There's
I think.
overlap, and I think it can be clever. Yeah.
Because a lot of where these waters, well, they're in both places, I think that back.
Yeah.
The Purple Park and then
Most of them that we have in parks, but I think,
like Bose isn't.
Yeah.
Bose open
Yeah.
space.
yeah. So
Um,
I'm happy, we can work together and look into this.
Anything else, Todd?
Yeah.
No.
Mike, do you have anything around the table?
Excited it, talked about geofencing, on Davidson Mason, what they did to keep the cattle off the trail. Whether we might be able to employ something similar for Metal Art Trail, so it doesn't close for a month every year. Be interested to see what it costs Louisville to do that, and if it's a viable option for us to avoid some of the closures that we have.
It goes on Boulder.
Boulder County
Sure.
project, but we could certainly inquire about if they have any thoughts of implementing that or doing some additional test sites.
It didn't look expensive, like the way it was set up, it basically with some wire and the solar panel and, you know.
Like the way
It
they.
was around Davidson Mesa, it was encircling the center where all the cattle stayed so that people could use the trail, and the cattle they just all stayed in the middle.
I think that would be a request to Boulder County. That's
Okay.
because it's their vendor who grazes,
Yeah,
so.
got it.
They make. the
But
decision.
it also comes to, sometimes what we were talking about earlier, people are confused that trail is actually owned by the town, which we
Right.
know that it isn't, and the easements are different, right? But to everybody else who uses the system, it's like, oh, I can walk to it from my house, so therefore they consider it like this town, right? So like, to them, like the distinction they don't really care, like. But I think that would, some concern that people have every year for shutting that down for cattle grazing, and maybe just frankly make it safer. I mean, there's times when I'm out there and like waiting for them to.
I've got
Or congregate right in front of a bridge, where there's only one way to go across the trail is the bridge, and they're all just standing there, just looking at you like, hey. So I just think it would help people more safely enjoy the trail system and not have to close it, because I personally think trail closure is not trail management. Those are different, right? Like if you have to close it for some reason, that's a temporary thing. But if you're doing it every year, then I think there's a better solution.
You close it, it wasn't well managed.
They're two different things. I just didn't want to lose sight of that item, because I thought, I walked by it, it looked very low tech. Like it wasn't like an expensive, it was very temporary, like you just take the stakes out of the ground, roll up the cable and it's gone, right? So it could be temporary. And that's it.
Tracy?
Yes, the retail boxes in Grassville Park with the impending construction, we really need to get those moved. Winter territoriality actually starts in early winter, so those birds are gonna be staking out their territory really soon. So we need to not get them confused, by moving those boxes as quickly as possible.
What would be your date?
Upstream,
We can move them up to some of the new properties.
Yeah.
But would we want them out of there by the end of January, the end of February? What do you think?
you know, all I was told was really soon, so you couldn't.
End of the year. How about
End of year?
end of year? Are there just two?
Yes, I believe
Okay.
there's only two.
That's what I was thinking. That shouldn't be too difficult.
Okay. Great.
We can even make it part of the project if we decide to move forward with that, but I think that's gonna be further down the road, so we'll
Yeah,
take
that's
care.
my only concern.
We'll
is
take care.
Timing, yeah,
Yep.
okay.
So, trustee Miller?
First, I just want to apologize that my work meeting ran much longer than I was told it was going to, so sincere apologies for being so late. Just a couple things. One, the new board, we have, one new trustee, it looks like for sure. And then there's some jockeying back and forth with the replacer trustee. So, Boulder County Elections closes out the cured ballots tonight at midnight. So there should be, I believe, a new count. I haven't checked, but there should be a new count right now. And then any ballots that get cured between when they close today and then midnight will be posted tomorrow. And the election results should have before Thanksgiving, but you should have a pretty good idea of how everything shook out by tomorrow instead of that.
AM?
PM.
PM, yeah,
Okay.
okay.
I'll take all day to count the ballots this evening. And then our work session on the 16th is when the trustees will decide who's doing what committee. So just aware of that as well.
Okay.
And that's it for me.
Joanne?
Thanks, Rita.
I only have a couple, and so there is gonna be a Marshall Fire Memorial meeting on November 18th. So we're still as a town subcommittee trying to put together an assessment on what the community actually wants. I mean, someone asked earlier, is it a memorial? I don't know. So more to follow from that meeting on the 18th. And then also just a plug out there, so you can put this in your calendars. But our sister city committee will be hosting its annual bazaar on December 7th here in the community center from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. So please come on out. We have so many vendors. Yes, December 7th, 10 to 3. Gosh, I think over 30 vendors. I can't remember exactly how many. But we're even overflowing into another room to account for. This is a great time to do holiday shopping and end of the year-round birthday presents, all of it. I mean, it's gonna be a lot there. That's all I. Okay, let's move on to our reminders. We talked about the location for December social. I threw out that we could do a doodle with the 3 choices. I say that so cavalierly because I've never done a doodle.
I could do one for the other board, but I don't.
Do the doodle for me.
Uh-oh.
I can.
I just like that. I just did one. Board meeting happened? Okay.
Then updates and look ahead. So I did look up the Rocky Mountain Greenway, and I haven't seen much out there. I know that there are constantly lawsuits going back and forth. On September 25th, I read an article that said Westminster withdrew its support from the Rocky Mountain Greenway Trail through Rocky Flats. So I know it's still going back and forth, and it's still an issue that we pay attention to since we're adjacent to it, but I really don't have anything new. They're not moving forward with any construction at this point in time.
So, but I guess I'm a little confused on, because there is construction happening, what looks like gonna be an overpass over Indiana.
Indiana, and I think that's a bunkway.
Well, yeah, but it goes right on to,
I don't know where it connects to.
it goes right onto the,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm personally in favor of it, so, but
Yeah.
I'll just lay that out there. But I just didn't know what. Have to do with.
I don't have any additional
Yeah, that's-
information, although I've been driving by that,
Yeah.
wondering what it was gonna be. So
There's an overpass. on
I thought it was
Indiana.
maybe gonna be wildlife.
But does it
it's
actually touch Rocky Flats? I guess I don't think
It is
it.
a trail.
I mean,
It is
it's
a trail.
still in Rocky Flats. I guess, I don't know. I'm not sure what that's gonna be, if that maybe is wildlife, because the other one on 128 is underpass.
Right.
And I have not seen construction there.
I just don't know.
I just don't know. Like I said,
Maybe we'll know more next time. What about our Raptor program?
so the rapid program is relatively quiet season right now. But Peter is in the process of adding all of the, volunteers to sit side. And so all new entries, will start going to sit side on his program pretty quickly. The wildlife monitoring program is currently at 89 entries, which is great. And, we've seen some pretty interesting shifts in the last month or so. Primarily, we've started seeing fox again. And we had not seen fox for a while.
There's one right up here, it must have a den up here on the hill, because we see it pretty regularly around here.
Oh, interesting. And there's one that's over by you, pretty regularly as well. There have been multiple other, I saw one at the mall, I didn't put it in because it's not a good thing. Not a good thing, a small one, I didn't, it was in Brookfield, so I didn't enter, but anyway, just thought that's
That is
interesting. Yeah, because usually fox and coyote do not intermingle,
I didn't know that.
yeah, no, they are not, they do not cohabitate. Yeah, we've not seen anywhere near as many bobcats. I think we've had a total of 3 bobcat reports this year, which after last year is just kind of shocking. So maybe they've moved back down to the creek, right? I mean, I don't know. I'm just totally speculating.
Or people aren't reporting, so
But this,
you think?
yeah, I mean, we have some pretty active volunteers.
I did pose that question to
Yes.
Ashley,
Yes. Oh, yeah, she said.
and she thought that perhaps last year's uptick was because of fire
Yes.
impact.
Yeah.
And they had shifted where they were, making their dens and where they were traveling. And now that we've recovered more from the fire, they've gone back to their other pattern. But I mean, it's all speculation.
Yeah, exactly.
But you would say coyotes, bobcats, 3 fox, any other big animal sighting?
Well, we've had elk, down, near original town, which was interesting.
I've seen them.
Those are the biggies probably.
No bears in the
Well, we've certainly seen a couple of bears over the course of the year.
Yes.
Which was interesting, but
Yeah.
not super recently. That was
Okay.
more in the, I don't know, they probably weren't in hyperphagia yet, but anyway, yeah.
It's so cool.
Yeah, yeah. And then the 2025 training for the wildlife monitoring program is set for January 7th, 5:30 here in the community center. And so I'm currently working on compiling an accurate volunteer list, so we're reading out all the people who are not responding to me. So we've got a current list of volunteers, and they will all go into SITSI, and then I'll do the training on SITSI on January 7th, and that will be when we kick that off, and she'll start using that. So for right now, my volunteers are still, that's okay. Wildlife volunteers, I'm still using Google.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so there's lots of things, and then obviously now we've got approval for a camera, we'll go get that set up, and that will, hopefully we'll have they should,
That's really.
amazing. Anyway, good stuff, it's all good stuff.
Thanks for all of that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Trail etiquette, anything new?
I don't think we have anything new campaign wise that we haven't already done. I know last discussion we talked about something about back to school, which now, of course, it's not September anymore, but you know, the kids riding e-bikes back and forth to school and how that can potentially create hazards, but I don't know if any action's been taken on that.
Yeah.
Anything's going on
We
with
did,
that.
we just did that initial back to school one.
Yeah.
I do think, we've had some conversations about doing another e-bike and especially e-bike with younger safety. Yes.
I do, you know, especially in these dark months. So I'll say even just coming to this meeting, you know, on Rock Creek Parkway, heading south, crossing Colton to come into the community center, there was a bicycle that was coming at me, which shouldn't have been, right? No lights, and then it was on the sidewalk, and then it was back in the street coming towards me. And it was just kids, you know, but you can't see them. And they're not following the flow of traffic anyway, and it's just scary. It is scary.
Did you mention, like, was this ever, I know you did the back to school, but do they bring it into like maybe the campaign or just talk about etiquette like in the classroom or no? Do they do anything like teachers?
No, we approached the school last year about trying to do an event or a program.
Right.
I just think that their resources are very slim and they have a hard time doing anything additional to what they're charged with academically. The PTO though, I think is maybe a better resource for that.
Oh, okay.
And we could maybe put some efforts into seeing if they would, you know, if we could work with them to offer some. It usually boils down to a couple parents and
Yeah,
but
it just needs to be their passion item, right?
There was some woman in Louisville who was trying to get something going for the same reason, right? I mean,
Yes.
somebody, yeah.
I think that's one difference too, like not everyone knows or cares the difference between a class 1 and a class 3 e-bike, but they're very different.
Yes.
And when I was up in Vail and on some of the trails, they had signs that say no class 3 e-bike. So they're actually starting to recognize that that's when people get concerned because they go a lot faster and they're in the street a lot more than, you know, class 1.
Basically,
They're
a
just
motorcycle.
very.
Yeah, it's
like.
Yeah.
So like,
I didn't know if
Like-
like something like trail etiquette can do like maybe some, it doesn't have to be an event, but it could be like an assembly for an hour for school or something.
Yeah.
Cause that, whoever is gonna,
I think
you know,
it's all the parents obviously buying these things for the kids,
Right.
maybe not educating them about like, hey, by the way, if you have this thing that can go 40 miles an hour. You might want, and you're, you know, 15 years old or 12 years old, you know, not a great combination. But it's not, I think the trail etiquette, coming back to that was really more geared towards our open space trails.
Yeah.
But it can certainly
it's
morph to these other things too. But I think, I just think that's another area that I can recognize that the teachers have enough to do that they're not gonna like try to police.
I mean,
You know.
they're interested, the principal's even a cyclist herself but they just like, they're tapped out.
But it would be great.
It's always been an interesting idea for that
Yeah,
reason.
they suddenly,
All of the parties and then, you know.
I loved our social media campaign during the summer that when we had some celebrities here in our own committee who were published in you know, various ads. But we could do something like that too, maybe in upcoming publications, just that'd be great. Okay, so Sitsi, do you have an update on
It's
Sitsi?
the time, and I think I already said that.
Yeah.
Told you where we're at. It's moving along.
I did not receive a wildfire update from Christy. Do you have anything?
I don't right now,
Okay.
next meeting maybe.
Same goes for prairie dog thing if they doesn't have anything. Anything for grant asks?
Just the goat grazing.
Yes.
And that we still have that small, trail grant in with Boulder County. That they kind of, extended into next year because they had some staff turnover. So that was for the industrial mine, trail. So those two projects.
And the goats are still currently, the first location will be in that corridor in Community Park behind the Buffalo
Yes.
Safeway.
Yes, all up and down.
I'm so excited too.
So you can see every thing on the baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, or on the baby.
It's like December.
Okay. Okay. And that'll be my Christmas.
Anything for or from Kevin? Communications?
Not at this time. We are working townwide on accessibility of the website, so there may be some changes that you'll see moving forward to make sure we comply with accessibility, but I mean, I don't think there's anything you all need to do.
Other than, I was dealing with that previously, this is like 3 or 4 years ago, even PDFs were an issue.
Yep.
So when we submit things that are PDFs, they might be giving us some different instruction on
Yeah.
it. Okay.
Yeah, we might have to present them differently and the same, anything that's a diagram or a photo or might have to have some additional information.
Okay.
All right. Well, fantastic. That concludes our meeting, everyone. I hope everyone has a great remainder of November. Happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you somewhere in December.
Oh, remind me, okay, the 3 restaurants, we had the Mexican